5 years before 9/11, the Clinton administration, many folks who worked for or in or with are now in government now, was warned specifically about bin Laden's terrorist activities and how he would be emboldened on them in Afghanistan. And they did nothing. And then 9/11 happened. And now it's 20 years later, right? We're facing the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and Afghanistan is still a mess. So speaking of the military, we have this crisis in Afghanistan caused by Joe Biden's mishandling of it. Now, I'm not going to pretend to tell you what should be done in Afghanistan. I have my own views, but one thing I learned after 9/11, or one thing I concluded after 9/11, watching everyone talk about terrorism and bin Laden and Afghanistan and the Middle East, and everyone all of a sudden was an expert. No one knows what they're talking about. So what your view is on Afghanistan, I probably give as much credence and respect as the liars that are running our institutions here in Washington, D.C. Because I'm sure you look at Afghanistan in a good faith way, without an angle, without an agenda. And you think, well, what should we really be doing here? You don't want our national security to be put at risk, but on the other hand, you don't want our troops to be there forever and a day. And I'm sure you've thought about it. But do you think there's an honest analysis like that in our our woke Defense Department, or the hacks that run our national security agencies? And I don't mean that in terms of I mean that's a criticism of both Republican and Democrat administrations. So I thought, in light of what's going on in Afghanistan and the propaganda that's now being force-fed us as the Joe Biden administration, tries to distract from its disaster that's Afghanistan. I mean, there was, I remember specifically, and I'm sure you do too, if you were following the news. Oh no, this is not going to be like another Vietnam. We're not going to have helicopters lifting off. Well, they're sending 3,000 troops in to evacuate our embassy personnel. And they were thinking that it would be a months-long slog at least before we had to grapple with the Taliban. Well, the Taliban are just taking over the country and we'll probably have it taken over by the end of next week if things go as fast as they've been going thus far, and putting our personnel there in immediate harm's way. But one thing I'd like to highlight here is we're not Johnny-come-latelys to this. We've been doing this work. We've been doing this, as I like to say, we've been doing this heavy lifting for a long time. And back in 2005, we had filed a lawsuit. No, we had filed a lawsuit long before that. It was tied to 2001. And we had asked for documents about bin Laden. Because remember, he was in the Middle East. I think, now I'm going on memory. I probably shouldn't do that. I think he was in the Sudan and then he fled to Afghanistan. And we got this document that was just an earth shaker. And I think it was purposely given to us by someone in the government because it's the sort of thing that typically would have been withheld. So someone wanted to blow the whistle for FOIA, I suspect. And the document was a State Department intelligence analysis dated in 1996, 5 years before 9/11, that warned of bin Laden's, his running to Afghanistan wasn't a sign of weakness. In fact, it would embolden him to engage in more terrorism. And the Clinton people were warned 5 years before 9/11 about the risk bin Laden, the risks of bin Laden's terrorism to U.S. interests worldwide. I want to share with you what we found, because I think it's important and provides context. You won't hear anyone else. So, this is an educational moment for you here. Let me go back to our website. So this is my Facebook page, Real Tom Fitton, if you're wanting to know. This is great. This is what heavy lifting looks like. Judicial Watch exposes the Ashley Babbitt investigation emails, Officer Sicknick documents, and the Fauci agency funding of fetal organ chop shop. Talked about that last week. It's gotten even worse. So this is the document here. It's my Facebook post. It's also on our Instagram. Speaking of Afghanistan, Judicial Watch exposed how Clinton gang largely ignored intelligence warnings about the bin Laden terror threat there 25 years ago, 5 years before 9/11. And this is what the New York Times wrote in 2005 about our find. State Department analysts warned the Clinton administration in July 1996, 25 years ago this month or last month, that Osama bin Laden's move to Afghanistan would give him an even more dangerous haven as he sought to expand radical Islam well beyond the Middle East. But the government chose not to deter the move, newly declassified documents show. In what would prove a prescient warning, the State Department intelligence analyst said in a top secret assessment on Mr. bin Laden that summer that his prolonged stay in Afghanistan, where hundreds of Arab mujahideen received terrorist training and key extremist leaders often congregate, could prove more dangerous to U.S. interests in the long run than his 3-year liaison with Khartoum in Sudan. Again, the declassified documents obtained by the conservative legal advocacy group Judicial Watch. So here are the documents. Let me go back. I want to show you the document, the smoking guns that even the New York Times admitted make Obama look bad. I mean, look at this. Unclassified terrorism, Osama bin Laden, who's chasing whom? Bin Laden's willingness to issue recent public anti-Western threats hardly fits the image of a man running scared, and he may have played a role in the June Khobar Towers bombing. By the way, when we first got this document, they withhold a bunch of information showing that they knew he was a vicious terrorist. And then 3 years later, they gave us a more complete document, which makes the document look even worse because it wasn't like bin Laden was just some PR guy. He was a terrorist, and they were warned he was a terrorist. So this is what these secret documents look like when they're given to Judicial Watch. And I want to go to the last page because I guess the summary. With pressure mounting against the mounting from the United States and some Muslim states, especially Saudi Arabia and Egypt, I guess the pressure, in my view, wasn't all that strong. Bin Laden seemingly should be on the run, but his willingness to speak more openly to the press about his militant opposition to the Saudi regime in the West suggests more a man emboldened by recent events, whether or not he was involved in them. He may believe tensions in Saudi Arabia are ripe for exploit through increased terrorism. Keeping bin Laden on the move by reducing his haven options will inconvenience him, but his informal and transnational network of businesses and associates will remain resilient. Even a bin Laden on the move can retain the capability to support individuals and groups who have the motive and wherewithal to attack U.S. interests almost worldwide. And as the New York Times noted, they did nothing. So again, this to me is, I'm going to shut off my share screen here. This to me is shows you why the left is an enemy of history and why they hate memory and they don't want you to know the full truth and they want you to forget everything that a normal person would track as they're watching something like the war in Afghanistan. 5 years before 9/11, the Clinton administration, many folks who worked for or in or with are now in government now, was warned specifically about bin Laden's terrorist activities and how he would be emboldened on them in Afghanistan. And they did nothing. And then 9/11 happened. And now it's 20 years later, right? We're facing the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and Afghanistan is still a mess. So I don't know what warnings they're being ignored right now, but you can bet they are. As I said, that analysis that you and I would go through as American citizens who have a good faith interest in protecting the lives of our troops and the national security of the United States, that's not being calculated by the gang who couldn't shoot straight, Joe Biden and company. So it's rare that I go, but I should do more of this because in my view, Judicial Watch has so much information out there and it's still outrageous. I don't know about you, but I found that document pretty outrageous. I don't know about you, but I still remember the 3,000 people almost who were killed on 9/11. I remember them. I remember their honor. I remember their memory and honor their legacies. And the boobs who were running our government were warned about the men and the man who was behind killing them all, and they did nothing about it. There's been zero, well, I shouldn't say zero accountability, but little accountability for it. I mean, certainly the only accountability has been through Judicial Watch in many ways. I mean, where would we be without Judicial Watch? So I should go back and do more best of Judicial Watch, because many of the documents are still important because they provide, the fact checkers like to say missing context. Virtually everything you read is missing context. I say the leftist fact checkers, but they don't care about the missing context for their stories that advocate their narrative or ignore the truth about what went on. And to me, this is big context. So I'm glad I was able to, because sometimes I forget about this stuff. We have a great staff here at Judicial Watch, and we sometimes forget about stuff. It's like, oh yeah, we found that stuff in 2005. Those were great documents. We should talk about them again. Because they were warned about Afghanistan. They were warned about bin Laden in 2005, in 1996, and did nothing.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.